they said, hey, how would you like an awesome guest speaker? And we were like, yeah. So we picked Annette, because she's gonna talk about sponsorship engagement. So when you have a project sponsor, how do you keep them involved? And she's got some great ideas about how to make that happen. Will it help you if we do a quick introduction and you can
Sure.
see kind of what departments people are working on?
That'd be great.
Okay, Kristen, you wanna take this one?
I'm Kristen Tierney. I'm a project manager in the English Language Acquisition Department.
I'm Jackie Sandell, and I'm a project manager in the HR school support.
Tara Chauvin, their program management office, so we support a lot of our IT initiatives.
Andrea Silvan, I'm also with the program management office.
I'm Jenny Mills, assessment research and evaluation.
Jean Forte, growth performance and training for HR and operations.
Okay.
Martha Burnett, project manager with the Office of School Support.
Megan Bennett. I work with Martha and also with the Imaginarium team. I'll just leave it at that.
Jessica Raleigh, personalized professional learning.
I'm Sudie Stodola. I'm with Educational Technology and Library Services.
Very good, thank you. And so we're also recording the programs because there were a lot of people who couldn't be here during this time slot, and then if you want to reference it again later, it'll be available to them. So without much more delay, here is Annette Leazer to talk to us about engaging our sponsors.
All right, thank you, Sharon. I appreciate the introduction. I appreciate your time today. You've set an awesome speaker, so now like the bar is really, really high. So if I have anything less than awesome, that's a little frightening. Okay, my name's Annette Leazer. I am on the PMI Mile High board. I'm the treasurer for the board. I've been involved with PMI for several years. And we wanted to thank companies and organizations that are sending people to the symposium and by providing, you know, a PDU once a year, a free speaker to come in and work with your organizations. So there's several of us that speak, and so you have lots of different topics that you're able to select from. I am going to go ahead and do a very brief pitch on the symposium, because that's, of course, you have to go through the commercial, right? To get the presentation, you have to go through the commercial. So we are having our symposium this Friday. I understand some of you will be going, so there will be a group from here. The symposium this year is going to be awesome because, I mean, just the 4 years that I've been going, I would say this is the best lineup that we've had. So we have Jim Collins, who has Good to Great and Great by Choice. He's going to do a 2-hour workshop. So it's not just a presentation, it's an interactive workshop. So that will be really exciting. We also have Patty Azzarello, who's coming back. She had like an 85% approval rating last year. People really liked her presentation, and so she's created a new presentation for us and is coming back this year as our closer. So we're excited to see her. And then there's just a lot of really good workshops. So I thought the topics this year were really good. And I hope all the speakers live up to the titles of their presentations, because a lot of them look like very good topics. Also, I understand some of you are thinking about becoming project manager, PMP certified. I highly recommend that. The organization that we have in Denver is very active. In fact, we're the 9th or 10th largest project management organization in the world. So we have a big organization, or a big membership here in the Mile High area. And I was a project manager for 10 years before I became PMP certified. And so then I went and became PMP certified and thought, why did I not do that sooner? My life would have been so much easier. The last 10 years I would have had some of the tips and tricks that you get through that. So I do really encourage it. It's not an easy test. So, and in fact, to a certain degree, you have to forget everything you know about project management, learn exactly what they say, take the test, and then take the best parts of it. Just a little bit about myself. I am an independent consultant, so I do project management for companies, typically medium to large size companies. And as I said, I'm on the PMI board of directors, and I'm also a regional person as well for PMI. Okay, so we're going to talk today about engaging sponsors and keeping your sponsors engaged through through your project. So what is your experience with sponsors? Let me put this way. What is your challenge with sponsors? Some of you may have awesome experiences, great experiences.
Having multiple sponsors with different visions.
Okay? That's good. It's not good, but it's frequently heard. Other comments about sponsors, challenges?
Having sponsors that change over time.
Okay, so you start with one and then you need to go to another?
Right, I think I'm on my third or fourth.
Oh,
At
fun.
the executive level, so, there, and so that's challenging to keep those people in the game as they come on board and they've inherited something.
Right.
That was not in their plan. It's just
Okay.
already there when they step into the position.
All right. So convincing them this is a good project.
Making sure they have enough information, but not too much, that
Okay.
we're overwhelming them.
That's good. Others?
Availability,
They disappear. I can't find them. Where did they go? So actually, you guys were very kind to your sponsors. I've heard a lot worse as far as, I do not know who my sponsor is. Or the sponsor never answers my phone call. There's some pretty interesting stories about sponsors. So we will talk about all of those in this presentation. And I'm sure that there are other things that you'll come up with that we can take at the end if I don't cover it. But what I decided to do with this presentation is I used the analogy of having a knight. The feudal knights who would go into battle for you, for landowners, or would pick up a cause and they'd go into battle. And I think it's a good analogy for your sponsors, as far as how you should be working with your sponsors. So as a project manager, if you step back and you think about your sponsor, think about their shoes, being in their shoes, knowing what they're having to go through, and go through some of these questions in your mind. So if you are a sponsor, one of your questions is, what's the prize? What's in it for me? What's in it for the organization? Is this project important? Is it not important? Why is it important? So you need to be thinking about how you're pulling your sponsor in and making sure they understand your project from that perspective. Are you prepared for battle? So you as a project manager, does your sponsor have confidence in you? Do they think that you can do the job? Do they think that you are going to take a lot of their time because you don't have the skills and capabilities to do the job? So are you prepared as a project manager? They're thinking about, will this project put me in the dungeon? So am I going to get in trouble? Is there a lot of risk with this project, either for myself, my career, or for my organization? What is the risk in this project? And do I feel like we can navigate that risk successfully? So they're thinking about risk. Which dragons do I need to focus on? So the comment around how do you give them enough information but not too much? Frequent thing that I hear from sponsors, and frankly I've been both a project manager and a sponsor, is if you don't get enough information or enough specific information as a sponsor, it's hard to know what you're supposed to go do for the team, how you can help the team. So how do you make sure that your sponsor is focused on the dragons that you really need them focused on? The last one, can I take this on given everything else that I'm doing? Can I take this on given all the other causes that I'm fighting? Sponsors typically are more senior people. They're typically busy people. They have a lot going on. And so they're going to be thinking about how do they make sure that the project is going to be successful and that they have enough time to help you make the project successful. So I'm going to go through a series of strategies as far as how you can address each of these. Okay? So the 5 strategies are having and creating a compelling vision for your project. So that answers the first question. What's in it for me? What's in it for the organization? Establishing your own credibility as a project manager. So how do you do that? Protecting your sponsors from risk. It is your job as a project manager to protect them from risk. Clear and specific asks. So make sure that when you talk with your sponsor on a regular basis, that you are very specific about what you want from them. And I'll tell you a couple stories about that. Lead with persistence. So when times get tough, and they will, every project runs into problems. You need to have the capability to lead with some persistence. Okay? So we'll talk about each of those. So on the first one, sponsor needs to know that they're fighting for a good cause. And so the comment around, I've had multiple sponsors, the sponsor hands it off to the next one, and then to the next one, to the next one. You have to repeatedly convince your sponsor that they are fighting for a good cause. So to do that, you need a strong business case, and I assume that's a basic, that organizations have a strong business case for the projects that they put forward, okay? But you also need to have a powerful vision of the future, and you need to have specific, bold steps to achieve that vision. Okay? So as a project manager, we'll focus on these last two, but as a project manager, you need to create a story about your project that you can tell, not only to your sponsor, but you can tell to other people, so that they understand what's in it for them, what's in it for the organization. So, as I mentioned, I do consulting for a living, I do projects for a living, and so when I go into a company or an organization and I talk to them about the project that they want me to take on, I ask them, who are the 3, 5, 7, depending on the size of the organization, who are the people that really care about this project? Because I want to go talk to them. So the comment around, I have sponsors with multiple visions. Make sure you understand what those different visions of the project are. So I go to those people and I sit down and I ask them the same questions. And I record all their answers. What should the vision be? What is best in class, future state, for whatever I'm doing? You know, if I did a great job, what would this look like? What would the end solution look like? What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? So appeal to people's rational side, but also appeal to the emotional side. As far as how does this feel when we get done? How does it feel different? What are the enablers and what are the challenges? So you're asking your stakeholders, who are the people, what are the things in the organization that are going to support this project, that are going to support this change? And where are the challenges or the people that are not going to support it, okay? And be prepared with that. And know from your stakeholders what those are. And then what are the bold steps that are required? And I use the word bold very purposefully, because striving to be mediocre is just not compelling. So strive to be bold, right? So what are the bold steps that we need to take as an organization to make this happen? Okay? It appeals to people much more if they feel like they're being bold. And believe me, sometimes when people say, here's my bold step, and I go, that's really bold? Let's amp up the bold a little bit, right? Okay. So I'm going to give you an example here. So I actually, and I know someone here was with the HR organization. So I actually led the HR information systems organization for Hewlett Packard, the global organization, and we were implementing a new portal. And it was not popular, let's just say that. HR was not excited because we were going to go to self-service. And I was accused of taking the human out of human resources. Okay. Gosh, your project takes the human out of human resources. Wow, there's a hurdle to get over. So we went out and we said, okay, we're going to talk to all the different stakeholders and we're going to ask them, what is the best in class? What does this look like if we do just a fantastic job? What are the bold steps that we need to take to be successful? So we came up with a vision. And this is the type of story you should be thinking about for your project. And whether your project is big or it's not so big, it doesn't matter. Have a story. Okay? So our story was that we were going to have simple, better self-service. We were going to appeal to people's sense of, hey, you can get access to things 24/7. You know, it's much more convenient for you. You can do it anytime. So we really needed to appeal to people's sense of being able to do things on their own time, rather than having to do things between 8 and 5 every day with an HR representative. So our compelling and simple vision was everything was going to be easy to find, it was going to be easy to use, and it was going to be easy to get help. And we use words from the stakeholders, right? Because when you go and interview all these stakeholders, you have all of this content that they've given you. Use their words to describe what you're going to do. It's much, you're going to get a lot more buy-in if you're using people's own words than if you're using your words. So use their words, simple, consistent. When I get into the portal, I want it to be what I need to know, when I need to know it. I don't want to have to find the email that you sent me 3 months ago about this process to figure out how to do it. I want the information when I need it and where I need it. Step me through difficult tasks. So don't throw me onto a page with 15 fields and say fill it out. Step me through, because some of those fields might require me to have information ahead of time. So if I am being stepped through, I have the time then to pull the different information that I have, rather than confusing me by throwing me onto a page, right? Answer my question, resolve my issue when I first contact you. So we actually had online chat. We ended up with online chat as our support mechanism. So that, and it was 24/7. So people felt that they could get support when they needed it. They could reach out to a person, even though it was virtual. So my point here is make it simple, make it compelling, be prepared to tell a story. And I'm going to skip over the next few slides, but what we actually did is we would share with them, here's what things look like today, and here's what things look like in the future. So think about using those types of techniques. You guys are in education. You're good at telling stories, right? That's how you get people excited about learning. What things are today and how things are in the future. The second piece of having a compelling vision is having bold steps. So you want to be bold because you want to make sure you're focused on the right things, and you want to be bold because you want your sponsor to know that you know where you're going. Okay? If you can't describe to your sponsor, here's the vision of where I'm going, and here's how we are going to get there, it's hard for them to have confidence that you are going to actually get them there. So have bold steps. So when you sit down with your sponsors, you can tell the story, you can paint the vision, and you can say, here are the things that we're going to do to get there. Huge confidence builder, huge credibility builder for you. Okay? This was an example for that vision I was just sharing with you, the bold steps that we had, very specific areas that we were going to focus and initiatives that we were going to create. So any questions about having a compelling, simple vision and a story? All right. The second area is establishing your credibility. So what are some of the challenges that you feel like you have as far as building credibility with your sponsors? Okay. But you can find people who can do that, right? They can provide that for you.
Having no history with the sponsor, they don't know.
Right? Good.
And they don't know you and they don't meet with you often enough to be able to talk to you about something, one month, and then follow up on it the following month, and be able to see what you did between the first meeting and the second.
Right.
You know what I mean? To start to build your credibility.
Build credibility.
Show what you can produce.
So a lot of it is about trust, right? So a lot of it is building trust. And I have here's some things that you should be able to demonstrate to build your credibility. The first couple of items are, project management skills that you learn in a PMP, right? They are things that are important for you to learn as far as skills. So you need to have a specific and detailed project plan. So not only do you need to be able to describe, here's where we're going, but here's the tasks or the major pieces of work that we're going to do to get there. So being able to demonstrate that you have a plan, that's a big credibility builder. Second, that you have a team with required skills. So the point around content expertise. So pointing out, I'm not an expert, and I'll tell people when I go into a project, boy, in fact, I'm running a payroll project right now. So I am not a payroll expert, but if you give me payroll experts, we'll be okay. But it's knowing what skills you need on your team, building that team, and then sharing with your sponsor that you've built that team with the right skills and capabilities. So that's something you need to think about. Having a good personal reputation. And that's something that, frankly, does take time to build. So it's something you should always be working on. The last item is trust. And I'm going to share with you something about trust that's a little bit different than just personal trust, but it's thinking about trust in a way that you can actually have a conversation with your sponsor. And it helps them have more confidence in you. Okay? So in any organization, you are going to find people who support your project, agree with your project, and people who do not. Right? Every project has winners and losers, right? A certain degree. Things are changing. You also have varying levels of trust. So people who either know you and trust you, or people who don't know you or don't trust you, or maybe don't know or don't trust your organization. Maybe they don't really know you all that well, but that organization, there isn't a lot of trust in your organization. So when you have a project, think about the organizational dynamics around trust for your project. Okay? So the first one is you have people who agree with you and trust you. So what should you be doing with those people? People that agree with you and trust you. Those are your champions, right? Those are the people that should be like saying, hey, Mary, she's great, she does such a good job, right? You want those people out there promoting you and promoting your project. So think about those people and ask them, can you help me promote this project? Okay? Because they're people you should be taking advantage of in a positive way, right? To help you. The second one is people that agree with you, but they don't trust you. What do you think of those people? Are they really dangerous? Probably not. They agree with you. They're probably going to let your project go on. They're not going to throw roadblocks in the way. They don't trust you, so I wouldn't ask them to go tell people how great you are, because they might not. So they're fine. As long as they agree with you, okay. Then you have people who don't agree with you and don't trust you. What are those people going to do? They are going to get in the way anytime they can, right? And are you going to be able to convince them that your project is great?
Probably not.
Probably not. They don't trust you. It's hard to convince somebody who doesn't trust you of anything, right? So that's where you need to really leverage the people in the upper left-hand corner. People who trust you, but they don't agree with you. So find those people and go talk to them. Say, okay, you don't agree with this project, but you and I have a good relationship, our organizations have a good relationship. What do we need to do more of, less of, different, better to make this project work? So use those people to find out what you need to change, or how you can better convince the people in the lower left-hand corner to not get in your way. And you want to minimize the number of people in this lower left-hand corner. You want to move them more to the right, okay? All right. So if you are able to go to your sponsor and talk to them about this dynamic in your organization, how do you think your sponsor is going to feel about you as a project manager? I mean, it builds credibility that you've thought about this, that you've identified areas that might undermine the project, that you identified organizations or people that need additional support. So it's a great credibility builder as far as that you understand the dynamics around trust in your organization. Okay? All right. Next area is protect them from risk. So actually, the topic we just had around trust, those can present risks, right? People that are undermining your project can present risk. So we've already talked a little bit about this. But there's a lot of areas of risk that you need to be prepared with. So you should be preparing for risk. And with PMP, is you do risk assessments, and you manage risks, and you look at the probabilities of certain risks, and you make sure that you're putting in mitigation plans around risk. So prepare for the risks that you are aware of. Manage organizational change, one of the biggest risks in any project, and is one that, frankly, we all could do a better job. I don't think I've seen a project that did too much change management. At least they are out there, I haven't seen them. Communicate danger, so have a good relationship with your sponsor, be able to communicate when new things are coming up. And then reacting quickly to emerging problems. And the reality is that if you do a good job of preparing for the risks that you can anticipate, you have more time and bandwidth to react to the risks that you didn't think about. Okay? So just a couple of examples here. So certainly having a change management plan is important so that you can manage organizational resistance. Knowing, having work breakdown structures. I mean, these are just samples of risks that you need to think about. Am I staffing my project correctly? Do I understand all the work that needs to be done? Do I have the work broken down to a level that I know who's doing what work and that they have the skills? Having a process for managing scope changes. Again, these are examples. And when you launch into a project, you should be thinking about the potential risks, scope changes, people leaving, resource issues, change management. Have plans for those things. I'm going to talk a little bit more about change management because it is such a thorn in the side of project managers in some ways because it just takes a lot of time. So a lot of people, a lot of project managers, frankly, tend to shy away from change management because they think it's kind of subjective. It's not hard, fact-based, rational stuff. It's all this stuff around people's feelings around the project, right? Okay. But you need to get change management to a point where it is a set of hard, fast tasks and work that you're going to do to change the organization. So when you manage change, manage it in detail. Really focus on what changes are happening, who's impacted by the change, and how do I create a plan to address that. So this is an example, again, back to the HR example I had before. We were moving all of the HR support to a central team, and they were going to be using online chat. And we were taking HR people out of the countries. And so there might be one HR representative left in the country supporting a population of 1,000 people. They could not answer all the questions that might come up in that organization. They had to leverage the centralized team through online chat. But they came back to us and they said, what am I going to do? Tell these when these managers walk up to my desk, tell them to go away? I mean, how do I deal with this? Because this is cold hard fact. I'm sitting in this desk and I'm going to have this little line, it's going to be like take a number, and I'm not going to have the time to do my job. And so we had to actually get down to, here's a script. When people walk up to you, here's what you need to say. You need to get very specific about how they would manage this situation. I mean, things like, ultimately, you're not going to have all the answers because you're not informed about every program anymore. They're going to have to talk to the centralized team because they're going to have the latest information about a program. So we had to get very practical. And that's my point here, is that you need to think about the changes that different audiences are experiencing and get very practical, very pragmatic, very specific about how you're going to manage that change so that they feel equipped to manage it. And you can do that through training, you can do it through briefings, you can do it through scripts that people to use, creating escalation processes when things come up after the fact. But manage change at a very specific level. It's not fluffy, it's not just a communication act. It's something that you need to manage very closely. So I have an example here. So I had one of my projects I had that was fairly small. It was when I had first become a project manager. And we were like 2 or 3 weeks away from launch, right? And they said, okay, we need a communication that's going to go out to all the employees about this program. Can you help us write it? You know, what's going to happen? When's it going to happen? Who's it going to impact? What are they supposed to do on day one? And so I started writing this communication, and I suddenly realized, gosh, I don't know specifically how it's going to impact, 2 or 3 of the populations out of the 10, right? I don't know how it's going to impact them. I don't know what they're going to do on that first day, right? So where do they go to get their login for that system so that they can actually get in and do their work? Wow, I don't know how those people, where they're supposed to go, who they're supposed to contact, how they're supposed to get access. Big eye-opener for me in change management as a new project manager. And I realized then that if you ever are in doubt about change management and having a hard time getting started, just start writing the communication. It'll tell you what you need to go find out. Because if you have to communicate to people what's going to happen, you need to have all that information ready. So when in doubt, just start writing the communication. All right. Any questions, any challenges with change management that I didn't cover? Yes.
I think one that sometimes you'll hear is the organization as a whole not seeing the value of spending some time planning your change management strategy. Because we have to get projects done so quickly that sometimes that's one of the things that we have to sacrifice.
That's not uncommon. And so then you're in a constant cleanup, right? So it's how do you quantify for people because we didn't communicate or we didn't train or we didn't provide the tools that they needed to make the change. They wasted, so many hours in figuring it out or whatever. So I think you need to help build that business case around change management. It is hard, I recognize it. And that's why projects fail as often as they do. It is almost always change management. And I think to a certain degree, even though it's really hard, if you can start to think about those key audiences and start putting together a detailed plan and sharing that with your sponsor, as far as if we're really going to help this particular population get through this change, here are the specific things we think we need to do. It makes it more concrete. It doesn't feel so subjective and fluffy and feelings oriented. It does seem more fact-based, rational. We need to do something here. So that might help you. But I agree. Change management is always a challenge. Okay? All right. The next area is around how do you make sure your sponsor's focused on the right things? So clear and specific asks. How do we make sure? So sponsors need to know where they need to focus because they don't have a lot of time. So you want to make sure that they are focused on what's really going to help you the most. So let me tell you a story. So I had a fairly large program that we were running, and I wasn't the executive sponsor, but I was the sponsor. I had a project manager working for me who was running the project. And we went through, several weeks of checkpoint meetings. And in every meeting, it was like I was hearing the same thing over and over and over again. We're behind plan. This is a really hard project. And no one listens to me. I can't get anybody to listen to me. And they're not getting the work done. When they tell me they're supposed to get the work done, they just don't get it done. And we have all these issues that are coming up and all these questions that are coming up, and I just can't answer them. And so, you go through that a couple weeks and you think, okay, they're going to get their feet under them. They're going to give me a few more facts. But after 2 or 3 weeks, and they are giving me more facts, I came to realize that they didn't know what was needed to solve the problem. They didn't know who, what, how, when things needed to get done. They couldn't give me a list of, here's the 5 people who have missed their deadlines, and they committed to it, and the consequences of them missing the deadlines is that these other 3 tasks are going to be delayed. And if we keep doing this, it's just going to keep pushing the project out. They couldn't get down to that level of specifics. That project manager didn't run that project anymore, okay? As a project manager, it is your job to know how to solve the problems for your project. You should know who needs to do what, how they need to do it, when they need to get it done. It is your job. And you need to be able to communicate, if we don't get these 3 things done, this is the consequence of not getting them done. Because people will always delay, right? People will always delay. Oh, we have plenty of time. I was only, 3 days late. I was only a week late, all right? You can't tolerate that. You have to realize that there's consequences for that. And you need to be able to articulate them. So when you meet with your sponsors, be very specific, okay? So here's a 1-page report, and I think you ought to be able to update your sponsor with 1 page. So you should be able to tell your sponsor if the overall project is on track or not. Are you on track? Are you at risk? Things are slipping, there are some things that aren't going well, or are you absolutely delayed? Which means we are at a standstill because we need a key decision made, we need a key resource, whatever it is. So you have amber, you have green, amber, and red. You need to know for each of the work streams within your project, because it's not usually just one organization that runs a project. You typically need support from various organizations to get something done. You need to know what tasks they're doing, and are they on track? What is their status? Share your accomplishments, share the key things that are coming up, but you need to know pretty specifically what the status of your project in each of the work streams is. Then at the bottom, here in this section, you need to understand your urgent issues or your urgent risks, the things that you need to have a conversation with your sponsor about. And you should be able to say, here's what needs to get done, here's who needs to do it, and here's when they have to get it done. And this can get uncomfortable because sometimes it's your sponsor. Hello, sponsor, you need to make this decision. I would have preferred you did it yesterday, but now I need it today, So you're going to have here, the 3 or 5 issues that these things really need to get solved for our project to stay on track. So be really specific, because then your sponsor takes that page, they walk down the hall, and they say, John, we got a problem here. I see that your organization needs to deliver something, and it's putting my project at risk. They have a very specific task. You're enabling them to be a knight for you and go out there and fight the battle. They aren't wandering around wondering who to talk to and what they need to have them do. They know it's very specific. So that's what's important as a project manager, to get to a point where your sponsors know what they need to do to support you. Okay? Let's see. Any questions about that? All right, the last item is leading with persistence. So how many of your projects go and they get done and there's never a problem? It's like a fairy tale. Every project has problems. The bigger the project, the bigger the problems. Right? The more people involved, the more problems you have. So as a project manager, you need to build your skills to be able to lead with persistence. So everything is not going to go wonderfully well in every one of your projects throughout your career. So some of the keys are: build a good sponsor relationship. Right? Talk to your sponsor as often as you can, right? I mean, not every day, but have a meeting once a week, once every 2 weeks. Be sure that you have a meeting and try to talk to them not only about your project, but what else are they working on. Have a good relationship. Understand, what's keeping them busy day in and day out. Because there might be days that you'll have to say, I have this action I really need you to take, and I know you are really busy, but could I help you with X, Y, or Z so that you have a little more time to help me with a specific thing? Okay? So have a good enough relationship that you can offer help in a specific way, not just, can I help you? But that you know enough about what's going on that you can maybe add some comments around where you could help. Be persistent but not annoying, okay? So there will be times when you send emails to your sponsor and you don't hear back. You send voicemails to your sponsor and you don't hear back. You try to find them at their desk and they're not there. There's going to be days that that's going to happen. So you need to be persistent. You need to keep trying, but don't be annoying. One tip for that is, you need to have a sponsor meeting. So you ask for a meeting, they don't respond. The next item is, I really need a meeting because here's the 2 or 3 topics that are very important for the project, and your support would be really helpful to get these things resolved. They don't come back. You send the 3rd message. Those 3 topics that we need to discuss, if we don't talk about them in the next 2 days, here are the consequences of that situation. Okay? So you're not just, give me a call, give me a call, give me a call. You're giving them information that helps them understand the urgency of it. And you may even get to the point, and frankly I've got to the point with some of my sponsors where I say, I've described to them the 2 issues I need help with, I described to them the consequences of not getting help, then I say, I am going to take this action tomorrow on this particular topic because I think it's the direction you would probably go. And let me know if it's not, right? Just keep pushing things along. I mean, you aren't going to go take some radical action that you think that they wouldn't support, but you're keeping, you're putting the pressure on, you keep pushing, and you keep them informed every step of the way, right? You're being persistent. Understand organizational priorities. So face it, you're going to have a project someday that just isn't that important. Okay? It was important when we started, it's just not important anymore. Things have changed. Acknowledge that, right? You don't have to hold it like it's your child. You can't let go. It's let go, right? Have that conversation with your sponsor. I'm looking at the organizational priorities, I'm looking at what I'm doing here. I am not sure this is the right thing for the organization to do right now. Have that conversation. They may disagree, they may say, no, keep going. But it may open up a deeper conversation of, there might be 1 or 2 things here that we need to move ahead with, but you're right, the rest of it is probably more than the organization can handle. So let's put that off. It helps you refine and focus your project to be more effective. So be watching for those shifts and come forward with suggestions if the priorities have changed. The last one, engage stakeholders directly when you have problems. So don't expect your sponsor, let me word this differently. Your sponsor should not be the gatekeeper for conversations with all the other organizations in your company or in your organization, or all the other departments, right? They should not become your gatekeeper. You should try to avoid that. You need to inform them that you're talking to senior people in other departments, and they need to know what you're talking to them about, but engage stakeholders directly. So I know when I've had big projects, global projects, I would have a forum for all the country managers, right? We will have a forum, and that way my sponsor doesn't have to inform all the country managers on what's going on. I'm informing them, my sponsor's invited to the meeting, they've seen the materials because it's part of the sponsor update that I've already given them. So engage stakeholders directly anytime you can, because the less you're putting your sponsor in that role of gatekeeper or roadblocker, the better off you are. All right. Okay, so how does your sponsor feel now? Yay! You've created a compelling vision, you've established your credibility, you're protecting them from risk wherever you can, you're asking them very specific things to do for you to make your project successful, and you're leading with persistence when they're not available to help you. So your sponsor should be thrilled with you as a project manager. I mean, it builds your credibility as a project manager, honestly. And you and your sponsor should live happily ever after. So let me open it up for other questions. Was this familiar? Were these issues that you find that you're dealing with every day in your projects?
It's nice to call them all out sort of together. All these things resonated in some way or another with previous experiences, but seeing them all together and thinking about starting a new project and sort of reviewing this and then
Right.
kind of actively engaging with that on the front end.
Good. I know whenever, when I was putting this presentation together, and I've given it at a few different conferences, and you pull it back out and you go, oh wow, I haven't been doing very good at that one. I should be doing better at this, at number 3, you know? All right. So it does help. It is like a checklist to keep you thinking about how you help your sponsor help you. So other questions about project management outside of engaging sponsors? I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. About PMI, about the PMP practice plan.
Not a question, but I just really liked the way you were talking about telling the story. And I thought it was interesting being outside of education that you said, you know, you guys are storytellers, you're educators, you tell the story of learning all the time and get people excited about that. And I think sometimes in our projects, we're not always good about telling the story. And I think just in general, we're not always good about telling the story of education that like we each are contributing to. So that just kind of spoke to me that, you know, it really is about putting that story out there, and all of our projects are impacting students and teachers, and
Right.
we don't always kind of show those connections.
And I think this is an area, especially this first one, is no matter what organization I've gone to and talked to, you know, healthcare, nonprofits, education, or corporations, telling the story, even though you're not going to tell the same story and the same thing aren't compelling to all those different organizations, telling a story is really, really important. In fact, there's speakers that talk about storytelling. Disney has a fantastic presentation around storytelling and how that's how they built their company. It's all about telling stories. So it's an interesting topic. Other questions or comments? Yes.
I would just say it was just very interesting to contrast what you suggested against
stakeholders tend to come out of the woodwork when things actually are ready to happen.
But
It's
that
like,
affects me.
where were you? Or if they come up with, oh my gosh, there's 6 things that I cannot deal with, and it's like, where were you, right? And so, I mean, it comes down to communication. You will think that you have communicated enough, that you have absolutely blue in the face. You think you've told people enough. It is never enough. It is never enough. And so, engaging stakeholders and not expecting your sponsor to engage them all is important, because then, frankly, a lot of these tips are take your destiny into your own hands because you have more control than you think you have. So take as much of that as you can, because you have a better chance of being successful if you can manage it yourself rather than relying on your sponsor to manage it for you. So think about the stakeholders and think about, how do I have debrief sessions, 6 months ahead, 3 months ahead, 1 month ahead, so that if they come back to me with, I had no idea, and it's like, shame on you because I told you 3 times, right? At least it's not a surprise and a shock. Okay? Good. All right, well, thank you very much for your time, I appreciate it. And I hope those of you going to the symposium enjoy it. You'll have to find me there. And those that are studying for the PMP, go team.